Hello. In today's video, I'm going to suggest an economic system which would empower everybody and which would solve quite a lot of the problems that we have in society today. So I'm going to base this on the idea that $60,000 a year is a reasonable income. I think the average income right now is about 63,000 a year, something like that. But the median income is a lot lower, like 44,000. Okay, and I got those figures a while ago. They're fairly recent, but I wouldn't guarantee them. But I think they're pretty close. Anyway, so let's say 60,000. So here's the proposal. First of all, everybody should receive $1,000 a month as an unconditional basic income. Secondly, everybody should have a guarantee of another $1,000 a month if they work for 10 hours a week. And I'll explain these. Okay, so don't run away yet. And then on top of that, so that's like up to $2,000 a month. On top of that, after that, actually, then people are on their own, just like they are today. So they can work full time, they can work for themselves, they can work for a corporation, whatever. All right. So let me explain why and how. That's really important also. So let's go with the why on the universal basic income. And the why is because we are human beings who live on a planet that is fully equipped to supply all of our needs without charging us anything, right? And it gives us land, food, all sorts of things, sunshine, water, all these things. So the problem is that we have managed to arrange our society or our economic system in such a way that the planet is privately owned. And so we have lost access to these things. Most people don't really have access to land very easily. Most people can't afford land. And so given that now the planet in a sense is privately owned, then $1,000 a month would be to compensate us all for having lost access to the planet. All right, so that is why. Now, how would we ever supply ourselves, everybody, with $1,000 a month, right? So, well, one way would be through a land value tax. So at this point, if somebody owns the land, and so if they sell it, then all the profits come to them, and they cannot leave the land to their descendants and so on. But a land value tax, it's not the same as a property tax. What it is, it's a tax on the value of the land, irrespective of what you've done to it, irrespective of the improvements of it. So suppose you built a nicer house, you wouldn't pay more. With a property tax, you would pay more if you build a nicer house. But the land value tax is simply imposed on the value of that land. So now, suppose, for instance, you're a wealthy landowner and you've got, say, several thousands of acres, and you have to pay tax on those acres. That is going to really make you think twice. Do you really need several thousand acres? Do you really need to own all these many homes, for instance, if you have to pay tax on the land on which they're situated? It would really make you think a lot. So a land value tax would be a way to compensate the community for the fact that the land is privately owned. And obviously, a lot of people sooner or later would want to get rid of their land. They wouldn't want to own it because it would be a lot less profitable for them. Okay, so I'm going to do a whole video on land value tax because it's really important. And actually, I'll reference a YouTube at the bottom of this one, which I think is wonderful. It's a great YouTube. It's way beyond my capacity to do it right now, but they've done a great job, so I don't need to. Okay, let's see. Another way we could pay for that would be just to give everybody $1,000 every month instead of lending money into the system through the banks. So at this point, new money comes into our system by the central bank lending it out to each of the other banks, and then the banks lend it out to borrowers who then have to pay more interest on it. So the banks have to pay a small amount of interest, then as it gets lent out, more and more interest has to be paid. Clearly, this is a system that needs looking at, because mathematically it's obvious that by the time you get to the end of this lending, there isn't even enough money to pay back all of the lending, because that's the way that interest works, right? So, yeah, the whole system really needs to change. Okay, and then let's see, thirdly, okay, this is obviously not practical, but the third way to do it would be to divide up the land into, say, what's the population of America? It's 350 million, 370 million, something like that. Divide up the land into that many small plots of equal value and give everybody a little plot. Okay, so yeah, not going to work. So the other two suggestions are much better, right? The idea of the land value tax and so on. Okay, so that's the first unconditional basic income. Now, the reason for that, for an unconditional basic income, is sort of obvious. Right now, we're giving out a huge amount of money in welfare, and this would solve all of that. I mean, different people had the money, basically. We would all get the same amount, but maybe by the time your income is about $100,000 a year, then you would start to have some of that $12,000 taxed back, right? So it wouldn't go. It would go to everybody, but it wouldn't stay with everybody, let's say. So the second suggestion was that everybody should have a guaranteed $1,000 a month if they perform certain work, right? And this, only 10 hours a week. I think that's all we need. So what's this for, right? So this would be sort of like the program that Roosevelt established after the Depression, right? He had people working on the land and working on infrastructure and building bridges and roads and public buildings and the like. And they didn't make much money, but something like 8.5 million people were put to work through that. So we don't have a really big unemployment problem right now, but we have a lot of people who are not looking for employment. And we have a lot of people who are working for nothing, primarily women, who are taking care of children, and a lot of care jobs. You shouldn't really call parenting a job, but anyway, a lot of care is performed with no compensation. Right, so raising an infant, for instance, if you have an infant, you should definitely get $1,000 a month for taking care of that infant. That would be your 10 hours a week. And you do way more than 10 hours. But 10 hours a week compensation is reasonable. And of course, the infant would be getting $1,000 too. So having this what is the justification for this? This is because the planet doesn't come with houses, right? It doesn't come with food distribution set up and that sort of thing. In other words, there's quite a bit of work to do to modify the planet to everybody's benefit, so that everybody can actually get land or get food or get the basics of what they need to survive. So yeah, we're all responsible to do that. We're responsible to do that for each other. But I don't think we're responsible more than about 10 hours a week. So maybe $25 an hour, which is what 40 hours a month, $1,000 would work out to. It seems a lot compared to what we're, like our minimum wage right now, which is between $7 and $15 usually in this country. It seems a lot compared to that. But hey, Elon Musk gets $60,000 just for brushing his teeth. Assuming it takes him about 3 minutes. So nobody can complain about $25 an hour being too much until we figure out how we have allowed all these billionaires and multimillionaires to be making tens of thousands of dollars a minute. Okay, even an hour would be totally like different scale from $25 an hour that I'm proposing. So you can't complain about that until you fix the other one. But what this would do, it would allow people to stay home with their child, to choose not to work for a corporation all the time, to take time off if they needed it, to choose to live a life of, let's say, simplicity, maybe poverty, but to choose to live a simple life in order to be able to exist while they are painting or writing or studying or doing things that are valuable, that are not just working for profit or just working to survive, which is what we are forced to do in our economic system today. Okay, so the third part of it, which is working for a corporation. So if you're working full-time for a corporation, you wouldn't get the second $1,000 a month because you wouldn't be putting in your 10 hours. I guess you could if you're a little bit crazy. You could do both, but most people wouldn't. So first of all, corporations would have to pay you a lot more to convince you to go out and work, since, if you can make $1,000 for 10 hours a week, why would you go and work for, say, $500 a week for a corporation when you have to put in 40 hours a week? You wouldn't. So corporations would have to pay more. And then even more than that, though, we still have to do a huge amount with corporations, right? We really have to work on economic rent. I'm going to do a whole video on that, probably several. Corporations currently, instead of industrial corporations, we have financial corporations. They work with finances to get money more than they care about what they produce. All right, so we have to look at that. Then, the crazy CEO compensation, the fact that very wealthy corporations can pay less than survival wage to their workers. All of these things have to be addressed. And so I have a lot more to say about the economy. But anyway, that's my suggestion. I think it would be great. I think it would free up a lot of people, say for that 10 hours a week, if the federal government sets up a scheme whereby, in the case of Roosevelt coming out of the Depression, it was mostly infrastructure. So yes, definitely, we still need so much infrastructure in this country. So it could be partly that, jobs for the infrastructure, but also jobs for taking care of the human problem we have today. In the last 40 years, people have been through so much. They've endured so much, while a few people have just had whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted it. So as a result of that, we have a huge problem with addictions, with mental health, with depression, just such a lot of things, with the divisions between us, right? So we need an army, actually. An army, probably of grandmas would be really helpful for a start, to really just try to solve some of our people problems. to help people. Okay, I'm going to talk more about this as time goes on, but there's my proposal.